Jenna Peakler here with Bancroft Realty, and I am a real estate agent here specializing in Grand Prairie. I've been here since 2014, and I've grown up in Grand Prairie my whole life. And so I'm just bringing you a market report for the Grand Prairie real estate market for September, but really it's through August. And so we can kind of see what's going on here. I know that there's a lot of times we find information and things on the real estate market as a whole on news or YouTube or things like that, but it doesn't always indicate exactly what's going on in the city that you're in. So I'm just trying to give everybody an understanding of that. So we're going to walk through a couple different images and graphs so that you can kind of see like what's going on here. So the first thing is something that is called Market Watch, and this is on our MLS that we have access to. I've got this set for Grand Prairie specifically, and then I've got it set for the past 7 days. So what this tells me is just what's going on with new listings that are coming out, ones that have closed, and then any type of status change in the listing itself, which includes price increases or decrease. I know it sounds weird that a price would increase, but price decreases, houses that went under contract and came back on the market, houses that are now under contract but have not moved on to the closing side of the real estate transaction timeline. And so this is just a snapshot. And so a couple things to note here. We've had 37 new listings that have come up in the last week. 5 of the houses that were under contract last week went back on the market. And what's really substantial is to notate the price decrease. There's 52 houses last week that are on the market that decreased their price, their asking price. And this is happening a lot lately. And this is probably in my opinion, the number one reason why some of the market is moving a little slowly. And it's because we're kind of still stuck in some expectations from a few years ago, where the market was a very different market. And I think that sellers and probably agents also have a little bit of a hard time knowing where to start the price point at where it's actually going to sell. And the market right now is dictated by buyers. We are in a buyer's market, which completely shifted a 180 from where we were in 2022 and 2023. And I've talked about this before, but we're still seeing a lot of the effects of what happened during the pandemic and after. But what really we're in is a market that is settling. It is settling back to where it probably was before we had started with the pandemic. And but as a result of that, we have a lot of houses that are starting high and then they're having to drop the price as the house sits on the market for a long time. So to kind of illustrate this point, you can see over the last 10 years, this is the average closing price for the home in Grand Prairie. And so you can see that over a period of 10 years, it would go up maybe 10%. Every year there'd be an increase 10%. In 2015, it started off at $182,000. Between 2020, 2021, and 2022, look at how substantially those numbers increased. So it went from 237,000 to 283,000. That's $50,000 increase in the average home price in Grand Prairie within 1 year. Then it went up to 302,000 in the next year. So in that 2-year period of time, we saw an increase of $65,000 in the average home price in Grand Prairie. That is not a normal market. And so now where we're at, as you can see, the prices are coming down. And so they're coming down to, like, if you look at 2020 and you see 237,000, we're at 225, that's 241,000. That's a typical increase in your value of your home price, but it's adjusting. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Coupling that with the fact that the interest rates for mortgages have pretty much stayed at a high 6% for several months now. And the increase of buyers, in 2020 to 2022 was really because not only that were people moving in here, but you also had very low interest rates. And so people were refinancing, they weren't putting their house on the market like they normally would have. And then you also had buyers that were getting really good deals on mortgages. And so now it's kind of trying to fix itself. But right at now in 2025, we're at 241,000 for the average home price. Another thing to look at is the number of days on the market, and that basically is how long on average did it take for a house to sell from the time that it went on the market to the time that it actually sold. So you can see from 2015, it started off as 46 days on average. And then when you go into 2021 and 2022, 2021 had an average uh, days on market of 21 days. That's, you can see the numbers around that. That is crazy. Because like I said, people were bypassing the inspection period. A lot of people were buying with cash, or they were just buying with a mortgage, but they just were bypassing the inspection period because they had to do that to compete. We do not want that to happen again, because what that did was it obviously, you saw it made home prices soar. And now you have a problem with affordable housing and all these things that are happening that we hear all the buzzwords about. We want a market that is balanced. We don't want a market that is too heavy on one side or the other. So now, as you can see, 2025, we're at 55 days on the market, which is the highest it's been in 10 years. And it's steadily increased. But in my opinion, there's two things that I've mentioned already that are working for that number. Number one, sellers still have this expectation that their house is worth more than what it is because it's basing it on numbers that happened 2 or 3 years ago. The other one is, if you have a real estate agent that has not been actively in the market for the past couple of years and they're coming and listing it, then their expectations are also off. I have also noticed that there is a lot of houses listed with agents that are not even in DFW at all. They're in parts of the state that are not even close to here, like Austin, Houston, Corpus Christi. And then the other day I saw that of the listings that we have available, there was about 6 of them that were from outside of the state. So you don't have great expectations about what kind of sell price. So there's a bunch of things happening right now that are kind of increasing that. Also, people have a stigma right now. I feel like that the market is not great for buyers, but it is. Now, this indication to me, you might look at this and say, the market's bad, we don't have any buyers. I feel like buyers need to get back into the habit of negotiating, because right now it is a buyer's market. And just remember, asking prices or list prices on a house is what the seller is asking. It doesn't mean that's what it's going to close for, and it doesn't mean that's what a buyer is going to find value in it at. So there, for those 3 years during 2020 and 2022, buyers did not have any negotiating power at all. Buyers are in a very good spot right now, and I'm going to show you some examples of what that looks like. So we did have 19 houses that closed last week. So what I did is I pulled those listings, and I'm not going to show you the exact address or the house picture, but I am going to show what neighborhood it's in and how much they started the price point at, and then how much it actually sold for. And the other part of it is how much the seller paid for the buyer's closing costs, that is something that's happening a lot now as well. Now sellers are able to give money. They're in order to sell their house, they're either having to drop the price, unless they've priced it well, they're having to drop the price or pay the closing costs for the buyers, or both. And you'll see exactly what I mean. So just a couple examples, you could look at Trailwood. I know if you were raised in Trailwood in the 90s, I think you'd be shocked to even see how much these houses are selling for. But you have 2 examples that are pretty similar in size. One of them was listed at $299. The other one was listed at $329. And the one that listed at $299 sold in 12 days. And they got an offer for $305,000. So the buyer offered $6,000 more in price point, but they asked for $10,000 in closing costs. And the seller agreed, and so it closed in 12 days. Like down the street, which these 2 houses are on the same street, they listed it at $329. They dropped the price to $299. I would imagine that they probably dropped the price when the other house came on the market. And then they ended up closing also at $305. And then the seller paid $10,000, but that house was on the market for 70 days. So they were trying to get $30,000 more for their house, and that just wasn't going to happen. So in both of those situations, the buyer ended up getting their closing costs, probably like their down payment at least, paid for, or mostly. Um, so another couple examples like was in Marilagos. The seller listed at 950,000. He dropped the price to 749.9. They ended up closing at 714, and the seller paid $8,500 of their closing costs, and that was on the market for 165 days. It was in Lake Ridge. So they listed at $800,000. It dropped down 792.5, and it closed at 400,000. That's substantially less. I'd like, to me, that would be, but it was on the market for just shy of a year. And so they obviously just were not in a hurry to sell that house. And then eventually they just got in a hurry to sell that house. So you could find some really good deals right now, especially if you look for houses that have been on the market for 30 days or longer, which a lot of them are. But you can also find really good deals that are the house prices are coming down. Like, look at this one in Indian Hills. It was listed at $220,000. They dropped the price to $199. It closed at $185, and the seller paid $3,000. It was on the market for 42 days. So it was very hard, even a few years ago, to find a house in Grand Prairie that was under $200,000. We are getting back down to good expectations. But it's also pretty common to get your closing costs paid for. And so that the lower that an interest rate gets, the more competition there will be for that house. So while I understand that people want to see that interest rate drop, is it better to get a house at a lower price point and have a little bit higher of an interest rate that you can refinance later if the interest rates drop? Or is it better to wait for the interest rate to drop, and now you're competing with other buyers and you might not get the houses for as affordably as you could have if you'd have just done it before? That's the question. And in my opinion, whenever the best time to buy a house is when you are financially ready to buy a house, and whatever the market looks like at that time, you just have to work within it. So don't put it off waiting for something to change, because you don't know how one change can affect all the other changes, and you don't know how that will trickle down for your ability to purchase. So I'm here just to help with any questions about Grand Prairie real estate that you might have. My number is 214-558-4410, and I look forward to helping you and talking, doing more of these as the months go on, and also do more of my real estate listing videos because those seem to be becoming popular. So have a great day. Bye.